one update, we did open bids yesterday on a couple major projects. We did receive one, only. Still waiting on some documentation from one guy and another guy. It is the same company that we used last year. I didn't find out, so just waiting on their safety materials and things like that before I'll make a recommendation and everything. So
the timeline, they did a pretty decent job.
Right. Yeah, they did a good job last year for us. It just seemed like it drug out forever. Maybe you have to answer the questions.
We'll present that maybe a bit next week.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is last before.
How many people send that out?
At least 20.
We're trying to do.
Well, I emailed them that have emails because Carl's did it have the response.
I've had certain people contact me about the project and everything, and then they put it in. So, I don't know.
It's pretty good.
I guess.
See, you repaired some fences there for well.
Yeah,
One was pretty bad too.
yeah, there was several barbed wires that broke and things like that they found. So we spliced it or replaced it.
Think we'll actually get to apply the limestone?
I don't know.
Got the weather game.
Yeah, it's weather game now. Because it's actually going to be dry enough because we had that last rain. Now I'm not real sure. Then if it freezes, then we're out. So.
Any other questions for Travis?
Thank you, Travis. Jim?
Yeah. We did finish up the slice in Pit Road. That area is down, very customers. That's the task force, 7 days, the rest of that area. Over the stone, pretty much on the plowing, we've got the road crossing board, creek crossing board, that's got all around the line. There's a couple others that outside of the area. Right at the top of that. We pretty much done round 1. We did get notice yesterday that we don't have to improve for round 2, and we'll take 3 months to get that notice. Bothering and safe, so again,
Or out on the Drake Road?
we pretty much everything between Wide Line and 65 as far as Grand, everything on the other side is got still in 65 Grand. There's a little bit outside, it's in Grand, it's hard to take the next week. Pretty much everything's under Grand.
Does the map on the website show the areas for things?
There's a map at the bottom of the Transtead State, there's area 2, it's not real detailed. But yeah, it does not show which 3 parts of that whole section. It's got contract for bids for. We split it up into basic manual sections. So the first year's worth doesn't is really no data. So we'll have to show what the repairs is.
And that's rather than bid that entire ground, broke that up, say, small scale, right? A lot less.
I think just be good for the public, you know, that's there, and see how it's progressing.
That area is pretty much the map, the whole county is not all covered, but it's just part of the detail. Well, getting around to.
Maybe you can highlight the areas.
Yeah, we'll have those areas. close time frame for those areas.
But still, hearing all good things coming out of it. Was anybody complaining about it?
We've had a few mouse issues. One spot here over at the festival, one time we were on black sense. We see that few less bodies. Shake it there. My guys were quite ready.
Next time it will be.
Any other questions for Jay? Thank you, Jim. Morning, gentlemen. Not much added to the board package. Showcase a little bit on the tap change crisis behind the substation. We had 2 transformers in that substation. Thanksgiving Day, we did receive a call that the dispatch operators could not control the tap change on 92 substation. We responded to that. We and my electrician, we went in and got troubleshoot that. It was in lockout and indicated that there's a problem in the cabinet itself, the tap chamber cabinet, the water cabinet. We switched the load off that transformer, isolated it, no big deal, 91, and carried that through work like this. So we switched it, and then Monday morning on the way to work, they called me and said there was some problems with the 91 tap changer that was hitting real low on one phase. Tap. Did a little dig into that one and figured out that there's supposed to be some marking going on the contact inside that thing, that through that. So we avoided that tap. We switched as much load off of that so that we could do it. We're right now maintaining that position, moving the tap. We got a technician in Wednesday and started, we drained the 92 tap changer cabinet. He opened it up. Evidently there's a guide rod that's got a couple of ears on the vacuum interrupter assemblies. They had broke off and that hit the interrupter on the way down, landed on the interrupter. It caused a lockout. Just really knew exactly what caused it. We talked to Mary around, was locking it out. We didn't have that issue. There's also a relay in there that was going bad, that finally went bad in the testing procedures. Did get parts ordered from the Rhinehouse and the manufacturing plant in Tennessee, and they shipped out last night, next day, so we should get those today sometime. Start putting those in. Hopefully we can get the transformer, get the oil put in tomorrow sometime, get the transformer energized, and be able to, I'd like to let it warm up for about 12 hours and possibly put load on it Saturday sometime. So once we get that done, and then we'll schedule a crew to come in and look at the 91 tap changer. So that's about where we are. But I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I've never seen 2 tap changers. It's really just
So I'm like, my head's a little spinny right now.
bad luck. Well, and the parts that broke weren't parts you could maintenance. They just wasn't any contacts or that. It was just parts that broke. So,
Tap changer has 100,000 operations. It's good for 500,000 before they want to pull any kind of maintenance on it. They could have done a 500,000 maintenance on it, close the door, the next week those ears could have fell off those guide rods. It's bad luck.
Just some bad luck.
I really want to know what's going on with one now.
I'd say we got some contact problems, but we don't know 100% until we get it opened up. So we've had trouble with that before.
And that's the transformer switchgear that he's got in the 5-year plan to replace.
It's actually in the budget.
It's an 84, and then of course we had that fault and everything go through there. 02, I think Chuck remembers that. So it's seen its share of the lightning strikes and everything else. But, we should be fine. They're adjusting voltage down faster rates.
Good luck. Good job.
You'll send us out an email when it's.
Yep,
You'll let me know, and I'll keep you guys updated, kind of like I have been.
Any other questions for Doug? Thank you, Doug. Carl, good morning.
Morning, gentlemen. Not a lot to add, a couple of updates. The fencing project there at the electric production building is completed. Got the barbed wire ran around it and be able to secure the property better now. The shelter is supposed to be delivered this week. I've got the purchase and checking on that, hadn't shown up yet. But we're expecting to get that in and set. And the last one there for the interviews, those were conducted, and I'm sure you heard John Farrell accepted the position of assistant director to fill that vacancy in electric production. And our official last day was January 6th.
This your last meeting?
I'll be here for the next one. The 29th is maybe a little iffy, but I have one or at least one left. I'll be here and maybe two.
It's ran 10 and 11.
Those ran several times in November and ran well. We did do our capacity testing on 79 and those units ran well also. So things look good there.
Any other questions for Carl?
Flagpole, we put up a flag, what's the flagpole?
That we do have the hole for it. We've got the pole that came from the old power plant site.
Okay.
Just haven't had the labor to get it stood up there yet.
So putting up the flag there, whenever they demoed the building?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Carl.
Thank you.
Olin, morning.
Morning. I don't have a lot to add, but we did start filling the aeration basin Tuesday. We filled overnight Monday into Tuesday morning with potable water just to test the diffusers. All that went well, so Tuesday evening we actually started running influent into that basin. As of this morning, we still have about 4 feet left to go before we get full. We'll be testing the mixers today. Pedrati is supposed to be on site next week to actually put in the DO and ORP probes and do some programming on some of that. I think Jim will be there first part of that to work on what he needs to. That authorization that was approved, all that work's been done now. They are starting to put the weirs and baffle plates into that final. They're hoping to have it ready to fill up next week. So, other than that, I really don't have a lot to add.
You want to talk about that last bridge a little bit?
Yeah, so North Bridge.
So that was the last bridge we had running last week. It was running, I guess that would have been Wednesday morning. It was running around 11 o'clock. Kyle was going around checking some other things and saw that it was not running at that time. The axle broke where it goes into the gearbox on that bridge. Talking with Kevin and the team with Vernon Mac, they kind of expedited us working on testing diffusers and mixers for us to go ahead and start pumping into there. So right now that basin is kind of isolated with the sludge and the solids that were in it. I think our best option, of course, there's not going to be a need for those bridges, in the very near future. I think our best option would be to, and Kevin is getting some pricing for us. There's options to pump all that sludge and stuff into like a conic container with bags in it that will actually collect all your solids and everything, and then we can haul it off. But once we actually see some numbers on that, we'll bring it back to you guys. But yeah, it was just.
I think we're hoping to get the new basin in service.
It is now.
I know you guys putting the influent in it.
Yeah, we started filling it Tuesday. So I'd say it. By the end of the day today, we should actually be returning from the finals up to it and everything. So
We got our money's worth out of those other bases. We didn't get this project built, we need to, so.
Yeah, it's kind of, the timing on that's crazy. Did you meet with Patrick?
I hadn't been able to this week with training and some other things, but I will before the end of the week, and we'll get that sent out next week, hopefully.
Did you meet with Septicon and get all your appliances for the break room?
The appliances were delivered last Wednesday afternoon. I did meet with Septicon. There's still a few issues that they need to come back and clean up, which Joe was down, I guess that was Monday. Hopefully that will all be straightened out in the next week or two. They did submit final payment, but until that's completed, we won't be paying that. So.
Trying to get the retainer?
I'm not sure that we really had a retainage necessarily on that contract, but it was, I think the first bill that we had paid was for most of the work. The last little bit was labor for the cabinet install plus 10% or something, but that's
We paid him some. We just
Yeah.
haven't climbed.
Yeah, I think in most of our contracts and instruction to bidders, it states that final payment won't be made until everything's, we've signed off on everything, so, I don't think it was necessarily specified as a retainer, but, and I think it's pretty common, is we'll kind of pay, they'll submit bills as they come, and we don't just get one large bill, so we typically hold the last one until, everything meets the requirements of what they submitted.
Yeah. It's what's left is some trim that it's a glue-on trim around the baseboards that there's some spots where it was bubbling off, and some caulk work that still needs to be done on the backsplash at the cabinets and stuff. It's not a lot, but they're aware, and they should have somebody here next week is what I was told. So.
Just minor issues.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing big, but what we're paying for that whole remodel,
Yeah.
Want to make sure it's
Needs to
right.
be taken care of. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for Nolan? Nolan? Megan, good morning.
Morning.
Just want to congratulate again Michaela Newton-John on her selection as Employee of the Quarter. I'm working with GIS Benefits to get Employee Navigator, a Ben admin platform, updated for open enrollment with the medical carrier change. They hope to have that to me sometime tomorrow for testing, and hopefully we'll be able to start open enrollment for employees on Monday. Carl mentioned Josh Rail's selection to be the next assistant director in that department, so we'll be seeing some movement in the near future on advertisement for a system maintenance mechanic. And just remind you guys of the Christmas party next Friday too. I think that's all I've got. Be happy to answer questions.
Any questions for Megan?
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Megan. Tony?
Morning. You guys see that there's a draft copy of the interdepartment home policy and the Exhibit A. Typically, in the past, we've never had any kind of formal documentation or policy when we've done interdepartment loans. When we had the peer review, it's not uncommon for utilities to do interdepartment loans, but it is recommended that we have some kind of documentation or policy. I did talk with the auditors, and they agreed that we need to have some type of, if we're doing any interdepartment loans, that there's some kind of documentation signed showing the loan. So in there, kind of the goal of this was to kind of set up some kind of fund, interdepartment loan fund, and start funneling some of the payments that we currently have outstanding to fund this loan fund, then, which will take loans directly out of that fund. As you'll see there, that right now we currently have just a little under $4 million of outstanding loans. And I've broken out the payments, monthly payments. The ones below the basin, obviously Nolan's Basin, the Grant 2 and the North Street, those are ones we've kind of talked about over the past year, of potential loans that we were going to do. So those will increase another additional $146,000 a month in loan payments. So my goal was to just start funneling some of that money, those payments back in to fund this interdepartmental loan fund, and then once it's capped at $5 million, then we will move forward with doing loans out of there and to never exceed that $5 million. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of explaining that or not, but.
Okay. The payment funds previously, what would they have gone to?
They just went back into electric
General.
operating.
Okay.
And then they've been kind of used up,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, they're kind of subsidizing. If it wasn't for those payments, our cash would be decreasing in the electric. So, I mean, we're kind of spending down our reserves as we go with, since we made that 7.5% rate decrease for credit. And I think when we look at the time of use, we'll reevaluate that, kind of bring that back to you. But, I think some feedback from the board we received earlier was the desire to continue doing interdepartmental loans, but maybe not on the scale we've done in the past, and have, I think this ties in kind of with our cash reserve policy.
Correct.
I think it'll allow for better planning, and then, we're gonna probably have some bigger projects down the road that this $5 million won't cover, that we'll have to do state revolving fund, bonds, MPU, lease finance, some other options. But I think this really sets a foundation moving forward. And again, I think Tony and I had talked in the past. The board had just made a recommendation to make an interdepartmental loan, and there was really nothing in writing other than in the minutes. And I think we kind of like having this Exhibit A. And what our intent would be to do is exclude the projects that the board has expressed desire to fund with interdepartmental loans. Fill out the Exhibit A for those, kind of a breaking point. And then as we move forward, all those will come out of that fund and then be capped at $5 million.
In other words, we just approved it, we didn't really have a policy to.
Yeah, it was just approved, and there wasn't really any formal documentation. So I think this is just better documentation. It gives us a formal application to present to you guys for approval from the board. It's just more structured, which I think is a good thing. Yeah.
So previously, were the terms and the rates, were they in the ordinance, or how was that documented?
It was in the recommendation. There was no ordinance. There's no ordinance for
That's
these.
good, that now we have a document, yeah.
It would have just been a recommendation to
To do an interdepartmental loan
to
for
do an
$2 million.
interdepartmental loan at these terms. So there
Okay.
was no, and no, I think this is, and I think the auditors have mentioned this to you in the past, so.
Correct.
And this is just a draft. We wanted to give you guys time to look it over and provide feedback and let us know. I think Tony's kind of worked on this back and forth for the last month or so. And it's been tweaked a couple times, and I think we've got it where that's kind of what we felt like the board was leaning towards.
Tony, in your timeline for the funding, we have a $900,000 balance for fiscal
23.
Correct.
Then it jumps, made it 500,000.
So if you look up there, Spencer, we could have, at one time, if we were to do everything right now, we would have $17 million of interdepartment loans out.
Okay, yeah.
So of that 17 million, 5 million of it we were gonna funnel into this fund to just do specifically for interdepartment loans, and the remaining 12 million would be either put back into electric reserves or the operating account, however the board wants to do that.
I just wondered where that jump came from.
Yeah, so that first year, we're basically gonna take those top 3 loans.
Yeah.
And we're gonna funnel those payments into that fund.
Okay.
And that's gonna put in roughly 900,000. And then the next year, we'll kind of reevaluate and say, okay, we're gonna put a portion of the aeration basin loans. We'll kind of have to just kind of evaluate and see where we're at on the electric side. And those numbers could change. But that was just kind of a baseline of what we thought would be a reasonable time to get that loan, that fund funded up to the 5 million without affecting electric too much.
Yeah, and once that 5 million is funded and that other 12 million goes, then that's where the cash reserve policy, as far as the cash on hand that we have, will come into play.
Right.
And kind of provide some guidelines for the board of moving forward on you know, what, and I don't know if you looked at what effect that will have on the cash reserve policy. We may want to tie that back into the next meeting.
The thing that's going to affect it is how aggressively we want to fund this over the 5 million. Because right now, electric has been operating at a loss, and what's helped recover some of that is these loan payments. So, you know, it might take 4 years to fund it, it might take less. It just kind of depends on what kind of year we have. But if we did fund it, and then once it's funded, then that money goes back into the operating of the electric reserve. So once we hit that cash reserve policy limits, then I think the board has to decide, well, are we gonna start putting that money into the economic development fund, or how we're gonna start using it.
So you're projecting, based on this, are you projecting that we're gonna hit that 5 million on 9/30/2025?
Correct.
Okay.
And that's I kind of used the baseline of the loans up above. A lot of that's gonna change. I know that's a conversation we're gonna have here in the next month or two, is what kind of terms we wanna put on the aeration basin. Right now, I think that's at a 12-year term, is what I've estimated. But we're based on T-bill rates, and T-bill rates last year were less than 1%, now they're pushing 5%. So, that's gonna all factor into.
I think what's gonna help too is with the cash reserve policy, and looking at our 5-year capital improvements plan, that helps establish some reserves that some of these departments will have cash on hand. They won't rely as much on the interdepartmental loan policy.
Right.
I think like the North Street Pump Station project, you see he's got $2 million there. Well, that's a $3.7 million project. So I think the whole goal is to try to have as much, some cash on hand in each department. Obviously you're not going to have the full amount. I mean, you can't. I mean, it's just doesn't do that. But I think these two policies combined will really help us move forward. But again, like I say, I think this. I kind of like this for the smaller projects. I think that 5 million, along with the cash reserve policy, and where it looks at future projects and having some reserves there, you could possibly fund 2 or 3 smaller projects in water and wastewater and broadband, and kind of get away from doing, I think, when we have the peer review, when you do these interdepartmental loans, it can have a negative effect on your rates in the other departments, because you're kind of relying on having cash available to pay for stuff out of another department. So even though it's being paid back at the same rate it would have been if that was in reserves, just get T-bill rates. So I think both of these these really work together well, and I think it'll make it easier for you guys to understand and make decisions as we move forward. So.
And that doesn't change these, because the statement's made that these
Right.
would be, that these projects would be funded with interdepartmental loan, which, yeah.
Yeah, we've already made those commitments.
Yeah.
You gotta there's a breaking point where you go from how we're currently doing these to how we wanna do them moving forward.
Okay.
But yeah, this is just a draft, and
We don't need to take any action on it, just a draft
I
to start
think the
review.
goal is, yeah, I think maybe at the next meeting, if, answer any questions before the next meeting, we'll probably bring it back.
if you guys have any questions or concerns, you know, they give you.
It just looks to me like that a real important part, and it always has been, is identifying potential projects. I mean, that puts a lot of pressure where it needs, I think where it needs to be put.
Right, right.
But identifying our needs.
And we're really stepping that up with the 5-year
We really
plans.
are, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a critical piece. You know, and we're not gonna cover everything. You're gonna have mechanical breakdowns, you're gonna have, you know, DNR requirements, EPA requirements that you can't plan for, but we need to plan for things the best we can otherwise, if that makes sense.
I think it's good, you know, we get these things documented, this cash reserve, this long-range capital plan, and then this, get them documented, it's,
I think it better identifies our balance sheet too, you know, of cash, what's going where.
Yep.
When do we think we're actually gonna go to the time of use?
We're hoping summertime, June. I think June's when we go to summer rates. You know, there's a lot of work between now and then. Needs to happen. You know, Tony and I have discussed public meetings. You know, are we gonna? And there's decisions to be made as well. You know, are we gonna do it voluntarily, or are we gonna do it mandatory, or you know, can you opt in? Can you opt out? And we need to do a little more research on that, and kind of bring that back to you guys, to the board, to kind of make those decisions. But that's kind of what we're looking at now. You know, when we had the wastewater treatment plant aeration basin project, you know, we had a public meeting at the Martin Center, and I think I'd like to do more than one of those, several of those, to really try to get our customers involved and understand. And I think what TOF has proposed as far as time of use rates is pretty simple and straightforward. We've just got two price points. We've got on peak and off peak, where you know, I've seen other places have 3 or 4. We've got critical peak, on peak, and you know, when we first discussed that with them, we wanted to make, you know, we do this every day and we know these things, but people that don't, you know, we wanted to make it easy for them to see, you know, what that difference would be. So, but I still think we need to do as much as we can from an education standpoint when we go to these to help our customers out.
I'd like to, during that time, be able to shore up the electric shortfalls and come up with some kind of
We'll look at all that. And I
cost
think
city rate. I mean, we could tie a lot of stuff into being able to do that.
Yeah, it's gonna be, you know, I'm pretty excited moving forward. I think there's gonna be some opportunities. You know, anytime you can provide customers with a choice is a good thing. I mean, some people will be able to take better advantage of it than others, but to give people, you know, opportunities to control their utility bills, you know, by giving them a lower priced time frame to do, you know, laundry or cooking or you know, some, and then we couple those with thermostats, some of that stuff. So prices aren't going
Tie that in
down.
with that incentive policy and take a look at that incentive policy.
Yeah, and I sent you a copy of that too, and it's been like that for a while, and it was just ground
It's pretty
source too.
dated, yeah.
It's pretty
Uh-huh.
dated, so I think a lot of that'll tie together as well moving forward. So. that's kind of our goal, is what we're looking at. Probably reach out to Toth here pretty quick, try to get in their queue. I mean, they've got work to do. Cody's been tied up with audit and some other stuff. We'll probably right here after we get through some of this, that's probably our next priority. It's gonna be the biggest fire we've got going right now. So.
By the first of the year, for sure.
Are there any other questions for Tony?
Very nice job on it.
Yeah, Jeff, continue.
Not a whole lot to add. Like you guys can see there, I was kind of disappointed in the ARPA funding they did put out. Kind of some overview information on that. I'll kind of summarize it here. What I did see is, and I think DNR really geared the water and wastewater funding scoring system to benefit small communities that have dirtier effluent. If you're going to clean up water, you need to direct the money where you'll have the biggest bang for the buck. And unfortunately, that wasn't us. So, I did ask for a score sheet. I think they're going to send those out at some point so we can kind of see where we got good points and where we didn't get any points. There were some communities that, I think on each list, that there was 10 or 15 applications that got kicked out because they didn't provide all the data they needed. So we, staff worked hard on this, providing information, and I don't regret trying. I mean, you gotta do, if you could get funding for community, you gotta make that effort. Yeah, when I get that information back, I'll forward that to you guys. Put it in the board packet. Follow up on that. So, a little disappointing, but I think on the water and wastewater side, they received requests for $2 billion worth of projects, and there was only $250 million available. So, I mean, I think that just kind of shows the state of the infrastructure on the water and wastewater side in Missouri. I mean, there's a lot of need, but even with the ARPA funding, it just barely scratched the surface of what projects are out there. So, did have the MOPEP meeting yesterday. Not a whole lot there. They did get the new code, which is the cost of new entry to the market for capacity for MISO, SPP. That data will result in about 6.75% increase in our capacity credits. We did approve the new Exhibit M, which is our portion of the overall cost. We did drop below 7%. I think we're about 6.8% there. We were at flat 7% last year. That's a combination. I think our load dropped just a little bit, but you've got other communities with loads going up. So you've got 35 communities. You got a little, it's kind of a mixed bag there. So there was some discussion on the virtual ownership plan. This is still kind of some discussion prompted by Winter Storm Uri. So we're still kind of discussing how, are we going to do best practices. If you follow that, I think the consensus right now is there's 2 tiers. You get capacity credit, your base credit, and then if you perform and meet some other requirements, which haven't been established yet, you can qualify for more credits. So, based on our performance, I think we would benefit from that. Our performance has been pretty good in that department. So, be some more discussions there. So, that's about all I have. I'd like to answer any questions.
This kind of goes back to Megan about the comprehensive succession planning. Have you begun to work on that? Are
I
you
have.
thinking about it, or?
I've begun working on it, primarily research, just starting to develop some tools for us to utilize in-house. It kinda got stalled with insurance and everything.
Sure.
And I hope that I'm a week or two away from getting back on it pretty steady,
So
so.
the goal is to transfer knowledge.
That's part, certainly, yeah, part of it, develop people.
Interdepartmental or?
Identify, people's development goals and potential and transfer in-house knowledge, so that when somebody exits, we're in a good, stable position, so.
Will it be a flow chart of some sort, or is it, have you gotten that far along?
It's more what I'm envisioning and understand that this needs input from all department heads.
Yeah.
Jeff, of course, as we move forward, and has not gotten to that stage yet, but what I'm envisioning is tools for management to meet and look at folks within their groups annually, at least, to identify things that we can do to continue those folks' developments along the career paths that they've got interest in and potential for. And we already do a lot of things, so part of it would just be documenting. We already do a lot of things that are recommended to help develop people for future roles. Just to give you a simple example, sending people to meetings and getting them exposure in that environment. We already do that on an unofficial level. Grant's gone, he has somebody step in here for him. So part of it's documenting, things like that, cross-training, things that we're doing and just, and just not really documenting. So part of it's gonna be that, and developing, when I say tools, paperwork and flow chart and forms to utilize to help us remember the things we need to be doing and document those things.
Thank you. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, you didn't, it's fine, it's fine. I've got a lot of input from folks in this room I need to get, though, that we haven't reached that stage, so.
Yeah, I think I would compare that a little bit to kind of the interdepartmental loan. We were doing it, but we weren't really documenting that. It really wasn't a formal plan. And I agree with Megan. I think everybody does a good job in these departments. Add to the skill of newer employees, trainings, and trying to get the best employees we can to provide the service that we're here for. And I think this will formalize that. There'll probably be some new things in there that we can do that we're not doing. But I like what she's saying too. Visit every year, kind of reevaluate, make sure we're on the right path.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Jeff? Move on to cash disbursements.
I think we gotta pay these bills.
Before they grow?
Grow.
Every time we let something out?
Probably.
Did get some FEMA money, yeah. We're down to 14,000 FEMA, and hopefully FEMA will kick in their 10%. Sure.
I move we approve cash disbursements.
Second that.
Motion second to approve cash disbursements. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Any other business from the board?
Executive session.
I don't have anything planned for now. No, I still got a little bit more information to get on what we discussed last time. I think related to the email you sent out.
Okay.
I did get all the FDUA.
Yep.
I want to discuss it with a couple other
Okay.
utilities.
We heard anything back from the college people? You send them out?
I sent an email on that and haven't got no response. So, copied Tony on that, so he knows where to go with the billing, so. No feedback there.
Nothing else, is entertain a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Say aye, Spencer.
That was a good article.
It was just so timely.
Yeah, I read that.
Yeah.
And
Hey,
I
we see
called
we
Josh
got the
down there,
streets
he's got a block call, I think.
Okay.